Hi, and welcome back to Ethical and Professional Standards. Now, this is the big stuff. This is the guidance for the standards. There's lots of detail you're going to need to know to be successful on exam day. So you're going to have to study this material with a powerful magnifying glass to be successful. Trust me, the time and effort you put into studying ethics is going to pay you huge dividends on exam day. Underline, take notes, and most importantly, practice with lots of questions. All right, so in our summary of the standards of practice, we're going to focus on describing three things that I went ahead and put on the screen in front of you. Number one, actions that clearly violate the subsection. Number two, the behaviors that each subsection is intended to encourage or discourage. And number three, recommended best practices for members and their firms. So just keep that in mind as we go through each standard. Now here we go with standard number one, professionalism. Now remember, I mentioned this previously, you do not need to know the numbering system, so don't be concerned with, hey, this is 1A. You need to know there's a standard called knowledge of the law. And on an exam, you're going to simply need to know what standard has been violated. Hence, knowledge of the law. They're not going to say standard 1A as your answer choice. So, knowledge of the law. We need to understand and comply with all laws, rules, and regulations, including the code and standards of any government, regulatory agency, or association governing professional activities. Now, I'm going to go through a really brief example. If you want to jot this down, this is fine. I would say it's highly testable. So, we're going to look at three different countries. And in our first country, X here, there's no security laws or regulations. Country Y, there are less strict securities laws and regulations than the code and standards. And in country Z, they have more strict security laws and regulations than the code and standards. And once again, you're going to see this probably in practice questions and mock exams and so on. Get really good at this. So here's the deal. You live in country X and you're doing business in country Y. So which law would apply here? Like I said, fabulous test question. Well, you live in X, there's no securities laws or regulation, but you're working in Y, and they have less strict rules than the code and standards. So if you said, I need to adhere to the code and standards here, you were correct. Now, Z has more strict laws and regs than the code and standards. So if you are an X and you're doing business in Z, what's the rule here? You would follow country Z because they are more strict than the code and standards. Pretty simple stuff. Easy point on your exam. So once again, you want to comply with the more strict law, rule, or regulations. Not really too difficult. You might see an example, something like along the lines is insider trading. That's a good one. So if you lived in country X where there's no laws or regulations, probably insider trading would be okay. The problem is you can't do it, right? Because it's unethical according to the code and standards. So we must abide by the stricter. So if you're in X and you're doing business in X in my example, you certainly might be able to get away with insider trading because there's no rule against it or law against it, but you would be violating the code and standards. So abide by the stricter. Very important. And then do not knowingly assist in a violation. Otherwise, you need to disassociate from that activity, and knowingly is the key. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that there. So you don't want to assist anyone in a violation, but if you notice a violation here, you need to dissociate from that activity. I like to say disassociate, not a word. It's dissociate. So pardon me there. All right, moving on to the guidance here. Now, what about the guidance for this standard? And this is something you must do. When you see guidance, these are the rules. So what happens if you notice a violation? Well, we already covered the most strict, the law, the rule, the regulation. Well, if you notice a violation, it's really covered on the second, third, and fourth bullet